So this is the Eachine TYRO69 unboxing, review and build video. So let's begin. Let's unwrap the cellophane that it comes in and open up the stickers on the sides. So what we've got on the inside. So that's everything all inside one bag. So we've got a bag with orange bottomed motors inside. No plugs or anything on them. There's a flight controller. There's a ESC with the capacitor already soldered onto it. We've got a bag of LDARC 65mm propellers. That's 10 pairs. We've got a VTX with the camera soldered to it. So that should be plug and play. We've got the carbon fibre base plate, and we've got a bag of attaching parts, screws. They're probably camera screws potentially. Got a battery strap, Velcro battery strap. We've got a 3D printed part, which is what the camera is going to sit into. And finally we've got the cables. So that's an XT30 and the cable that's going to run between the ESC and the flight controller. So let's get it all out. So here we have all the pieces out on the desk. So running through everything that we've got here, we've got these Eachine motors, and they are 2 to 3S 1104 motors, and they are 8600 kV. They're a 4-bolt pattern on the bottom, and they have 2 holes in the top for attaching other types of propellers if you want to use like a 3-bay propeller that requires screws into it. The flight controller and ESC are both unbranded. The flight controller has all of the plugs on required in order to connect the VTX and the camera, but it also has solder pads on the bottom. Potentially they will allow you to wire up things without using the plugs on the top. The camera is a Cadex Beetle 1200 TVL. Comes in 4:3 size, and the VTX which is attached is 25 milliwatts. The ESC is a 20 amp ESC, so that should be pretty insane. And the only other thing, you have to add your own receiver, which will be then soldered to it. I have here an XM Plus, which I've had knocking around for a while, so that's what's going to go on it for now. So the next part is to move on to the actual build. So before moving on to doing any kind of soldering, I like to get the flight controller and actually plug it into a USB on Betaflight and make sure that 1, it powers up, and 2, it connects to Betaflight. That way, if you got a dead on arrival flight controller, you know that it's not something that you've broken during soldering, it was actually broken before you received it. So I've slammed all the pieces together dead quick, and the motor wires are ridiculously long, so I'm probably going to try and put them underneath here and then bend them around so that they join the underside of the ESCs. Try and solder it all up that way around, so it'll create a bit of slack in the wires if they get snagged. It should also keep them lower than if I was to just go straight across to the top. Then the prop's going to be able to strike it really easily. So this was really simple. The camera just sort of slots in, same with the VTX. There's a button here which sort of sticks out from the side, and that was a bit tricky to sort of tuck into the correct place. But yeah, I just slotted all of the rest of it together. So disassembling again now in order to be able to solder the ESC from below. So looking at this, it's just a case of slamming the screws through from the bottom and then placing a rubber piece between each board. You have to make the decision whether to have the battery going front to back or left to right, and obviously you want to do that before you solder everything up, because that's going to change the motor mapping, and then you have to change it all in Betaflight. So I'm going to begin and then get back to you. I've tinned all of the individual ESC pads as well as the wires. The ESC is currently flipped upside down so that I can try and get the wires to go underneath the stack. That'll be all tidy. So now we're going to have a crack at it. Just one thing to take note of, this wire here has to come at quite an angle, otherwise it's going to hit this standoff. So I'm going to try and do that one first, and then hopefully the rest will just follow suit. It's trickier than it looks, this, trying to get it onto the underside because of the components which are in the way. Not very happy with that at all. So everything is now soldered together from the motor to the ESC. The XT30 will still need to be added on, and then the receiver will be needed to be added to the flight controller. Soldering it around this way, really tricky because of the components that you have behind the pads, so you have to come in at quite a steep angle. Now I've left these their entire full length. Potentially could have been a better idea to cut the shortest one slightly shorter, but I'm going to try and sort of curl it inside, twist it or something, and lose a bit of length like that. So I'll try and put it together now and see if that's okay before progressing on any further. So the XT30 has been soldered onto the ESC. All of the motor wires are soldered underneath the ESC. They run into the middle and then around, into the middle and around for all of them, and then I'll just remap them in BLHeli to be the correct motor direction. I've also soldered an XM Plus Diversity FR Sky receiver to this port here. I've then plugged the micro USB into the computer and gone onto Betaflight and made sure that it's all correct after binding to the module. The one thing that I did incorrectly was, when you're looking at this, there's actually a jump pad that needs to be soldered to. If you can see that the pad is just there, so you can see it says either S-bus or PPM, and I'm using S-bus, so I have bridged the gap between the middle and the S-bus, which enabled it to work on Betaflight. Next I'll be finalising the build, putting it all together, and then setting it up on Betaflight. So I've popped the flight controller onto the top, and then I'm going to run the cable between the flight controller and the ESC. So we're going to plug that in, making sure you get it the right way round, so not the way I just had it. So we'll plug that into there, and we also need to plug it in to the underside, which I'm going to do with the board removed. So again, make sure you get it the right way up, make sure it's fully inserted. That's then done, so that's going to need a little twist in it, like so, and back onto the top of here. Now this is all ideally going to want tucking underneath the board, because we can't have it sticking out like that, that's just going to cause issues, so I'm going to have a go at trying to tuck that underneath there next. So that's more like what we'd like it to look like. In order to do that, all I've done is I've straightened it out, push it all the way over, and then try and fold it back on itself while pushing it onto the standoffs. And that's perfect like that, much tidier. So then it's on to the next piece, which is to drop the next lot of rubber standoffs on. Oh, we appear to have misplaced one. Oh damn! So once I managed to find the missing rubber standoff, I've then placed the 3D printed mount onto the top, and then I'm going to take the 4 nuts and screw those down. I'm going to try and slide this somewhere tidily and safely away, and then move on to the Betaflight programming. So the quadcopter is now fully assembled. Last thing that I need to do is actually to put the antennas somewhere. I've managed to tuck all of the wires in neatly, so that hopefully nothing should be able to be snagged by the propellers. When we're looking at it, this is where the 3-pin camera connector goes, so it comes out of the back of the video transmitter, and I've tucked it directly over the top of where the receiver's actually sat inside here. And the smart audio cable is this one here, so that's a 4-pin plug with only 2 pins in it, and it's the front of the flight controller, not the rear, because there's 2 that you can choose from. They're all marked on the actual flight controller, so it's fairly self-explanatory. So next it's a case of going into Betaflight and checking the motor directions.